And
So
it gives you that option. That's the new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess they had problems. You can only imagine there was problems that led to that. Everything like that is that way. So I'll just say hello and I'll get you the first question. Okay.
Sounds great.
Hey, Marcia, how you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. It's fun to be with you. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely fun to talk to you as well. The inspiration for this, and it's great to be able to kind of actually talk to you. So I feel like I know you because all the stories that Robert told, and then even we had him recording some Bourbon Dailies the other day, and there was an incident. He was on the phone with you. He had left something, and he had your keys, and you were then stranded there. So, but yeah, I figured it out.
We went to a whiskey tasting.
A whiskey tasting. So you were left.
That's
not a bad place to be stranded, though, right?
Yeah, there's worse places.
Oh, I mean, especially at somebody say whiskey when they're admins. You know how many wonderful things they have to taste, and they were cracking a Van Winkle rye that they waited for me, and I got to do that.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
that's
we were having a good time.
This is a baller, Mom.
See, what's funny about that is I think that is like the most unsung hero of the, everyone talks about Van Winkles and how wonderful they are, but I don't think people realize the rye is the best thing in the entire lineup.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it. And what I really liked about it was the fact that, you know how sometimes rye you get a little out of that little grassiness or a little hay. I thought that the taste of it that you got it was almost like that rye was just being picked fresh. We had just dried on right there, and you'd kind of picked it, so you really had that nice herbalness and just a little bit of that grassiness that was so nice. I really enjoyed it.
Okay. A pro tip that came out of there too. I want to just share that with anybody. If you ever find yourself in that situation, Uber will come pick up a set of keys and then bring them to the person stranded. So you don't have to ride there, ride back, and all that kind of
So
stuff.
there's Uber Eats and Uber Key Delivery.
Uber Key Delivery. It's a new thing.
Yeah.
Uber Key Delivery. So yeah. So
Marcia that is the good tip.
Yeah. So Marcia, obviously we want to find out, about the distillery. We want to find out about, raising Robert and Jonathan. But before we get to that, we just like to get to know our guests a little bit on a personal basis. So if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I was born and raised in Montana, and my background is I'm a speech pathologist. I've worked for over 20 years in special ed with preschool children with disabilities. Their dad's in the metal business. So we've lived a lot of places. About every 6 years, we came from Montana to El Paso, and El Paso, we took after 11 years there, we did make a little trip out to New Jersey where he was working in New York. And of course, Rob was born in New Jersey. Jonathan was born in Texas, but it didn't take us long to get back here. And then we lived in Corpus Christi, Amarillo. So we would have thought we were in the military as often as we moved. And I think this is part of what it shapes who they are. And I think it certainly didn't hurt them. So, but when we finally finished with the move from Texas, we moved back to your area right outside St. Louis where we were living. And that's where they went to graduate school. But I had decided I was not going to get one more certification. So I started working. We have a family metals trading company that I worked with. And so when the boys started the distillery, fell right into helping them started. And that first trip to Louisville just kind of, the bug bites. Once you get into this industry, it just kind of sucks you in, doesn't it?
That's right.
Yeah.
It's like the big vacuum cleaner. And you just want it, the people are so much fun. The experiences were fun. And we were all starting this business together. So it was everybody depending on everybody. It's been a great experience.
Yeah. Obviously you've known them their entire lives, and you kind of look back and, when they were young, I mean, they told us on the show that there was conversations that they wanted to do, they wanted to start a distillery down the road. But when they were younger, did you see any signs that either this would be a path they'd want to go, or even moreover, do something together as a family?
Absolutely not. If you talk a lot with Robert. I don't know if you've met Jonathan. Have you met Jonathan?
No, I haven't met him.
Okay. Now there's 4 years difference. So their whole lives, you know, one's in kindergarten and one's a year old. One's ready for middle school. One's in grade school. One hits middle school. The other one's, you know, finishing high school. One's in high school. One's in college. And so that their years difference are so great at those ages. So Jonathan is a typical background. He's the engineer, type A personality, and he is very he knew exactly what he always wanted to do. He went into engineering. He went into biomedical engineering. He wanted to work in the medical fields, and so he kind of always knew where he was going. And Robert was always the most social, and he was it was growing up. Every place that Robert went, it was like, for instance, he's in grade school, and I get a call from the counselor because the kids on the playground had decided to beat up one of the other children, because that's how grade school kids act. And he said, you know, I have to tell you this. I had to call them all into the counselor's office, and Robert sat down and he explained to me that you know that this friend, you know, he really tends to do things that make other children angry. And sometimes, he said, in 5 minutes, he had it explained in better language than I could have. And and that's always been Robert.
Yeah.
And were they
I mean,
typical
the two
siblings?
personalities.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Renee.
The two personalities are the perfect formula for opening a distillery, I think.
Right.
Yes, because neither one of them wants the
big.
same job.
Exactly. Like it's perfect. One can take the lead on the social aspect. One can, you know, sit back and make sure that A, B, and C are, you know, performing well. I think that's a great formula.
We always laugh. Jonathan says sometimes, he says, I just kind of some days like to just lock the door and just have it all to myself.
Yeah.
Now, were they close siblings? Were they rivals? I mean, how were they as growing up?
Socially, they didn't interact a lot because of the differences in age, but they both played soccer, so they'd say they interacted in those aspects. But I think right now probably they're closer than they've ever been.
Sure. Yeah.
They have they've always supported each other. When you move that much, you always have to support it. And of course, I found out more stories about the things I never knew. You as a parent, you really don't know what's going on about.
No idea what you're talking about.
So actually, they did more things in when one was a freshman and one was a senior than I ever heard of. But and so it's kind of funny that these stories, as we go along, keep coming up. But you know, you think you're such a great parent and you're knowing what's going on all the time. I don't think so.
I think
you only know what they want you to know.
As long as they still have 10 fingers, 10 toes, they're still doing okay.
And when Rob was in high school and he went down to stay at Texas Tech with his brother, So they certainly did have a lot of good times together, but more than I knew of, right? I think there was one that I think came up last night at dinner, and he was saying, well, you know, when we moved Robert was in middle school, we moved to Amarillo, and there was somebody who was picking on his brother, right? And so I think they were at a church function. Of course, it happened at church, right? And he says, I just grabbed him and pushed him under the stairs and told him if he laid a finger on my brother one more time, he'd have me to answer to. And I said, I never would have managed you to, you know, so they stuck up for each other pretty good.
That's good.
Well, I guess doing the moving that you did, you have to go make new friends, but you always start out with at least one being your brother. So that's a good way to kind of grow up.
Yeah.
So is it true Robert actually told you at Christmas dinner that he had decided that he didn't want to be a lawyer, after he had just graduated from law school?
He hadn't even graduated. He was going to graduate in May. So this was Christmas before graduation. And yes, if you know Robert well, if you listen to him, he's non-confrontational. He probably kept thinking in his mind, where is the place I'm going to get in the least trouble bringing this up? And so he waited. We had, and I used to do all the big fancy, the china and the fancy silverware. And, it was the big sit down event. And he did, he looked across the table and we're sitting there and he says it, and you almost want to drop the spoon, But Jonathan jumped on board
Yeah,
right away. And
we
he says,
heard.
I'm not going to work. And then his poor little wife is sitting there with a, you know, like a 2-month-old. And she looks and she says, I don't care what you guys do as long as you move to Texas. And and their dad said, you know what? Finish that degree and do what you love. Do what you want to do,
Yeah.
because nobody can take those degrees away. You guys have already,
Nope.
you know, you've already achieved what, you know, your goal. And, you know, maybe earlier in life is instead of later in life is the time to chase those dreams. So he supported them. And I said, well, what
Rest
the
is
world?
history. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What, like, do you remember what your first thought was? Like, were you like just about to take a bite of turkey and like, oh, by the way, I've done all this work to become a lawyer, but I don't want to do that.
Did he do that thing where you kind of hit the knife to the glass and you're kind of like, I've got an announcement?
Should have thought of that one.
Since
Everyone
it's
wanted-
Christmas dinner. Yeah.
No.
Did he pour you a big glass of wine first to make sure you drank
Yeah,
a
we
little
did
bit?
have the big glass of wine. Yes,
Yeah.
we did have that. But I think that I think that it was a good time.
Yeah.
I think it was a good
Yeah.
move for everybody.
Yeah.
And you got to chase those dreams at some point. And their dad
Exactly.
said, you know, I've worked for 35 years, 40 years in the industry, and he said, we built distilleries. I see them, you know, they're blowing them up and tearing them down. You're doing he says, in all these years, he says, you work, but he said, he says, if you create it for yourself, you'll have the dream that you've created. And he said, you know what? Go for it. I'll
Yeah.
support you.
Yeah.
That's
That's
the
good.
greatest Christmas ever, really. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it, it had to be tough for Robert coming out and saying this. He said, not confrontational. I mean, you know, parents, you know, help you out during college, and he's going through all this, and he's like, I'm not even really going to use this. And then his brother, who has a family, and he started his career, is I'm going to quit it. And everyone kind of walks away from what they're doing to everything up to that point, and you're going
Yeah.
to start something new. And then you end up starting this story. It's just amazing. Just
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. I think what really happened is everyone else was on board and they thought, let's break it to mom over dinner.
They probably are talking in the
everyone knew
background.
except
Right,
mom.
right. It might have been a coordinated effort, actually. Yeah.
You know, I did have a few nights of nightmares of thinking about, but nobody knows how to do this.
Yeah.
You know, we're doing this. I remember having a panic attack almost when I actually was not here when they brought in the first stills, but when they brought in the big still from Vendome, and I'm looking at this massive still. I mean, it's a 1,200 gallon still. I mean, it's 20 feet tall.
Wow.
And
yeah.
where that, you know, they bring in the people from Vendome, and that had hand hammered the helmet for it, and they're putting it together. And I'm looking at this, and then I see that big boiler. That boiler scares me to death, right?
Oh yeah.
And I'm thinking, oh my God, we're going to blow ourselves up. We
Yeah.
don't. I mean, who's
Right.
nobody has got a book of directions on how to do this.
Yeah.
And I was just like totally amazed the first time when we were we ran the stills, and we worked with like Nancy Fraley, but she doesn't run equipment or anything. And, you know, they had talked about their ideas and things they were going to create. And I remember the first day we pulled it off the still and we get it ready, and calling her up. She's in California at home, and the guys are so excited. It's their first whiskey. And she says she wanted to know what temperatures they'd pulled off and what proof and how long they'd run it or whatever. And I think they ran it way into the tails. Okay. And I remember her at the end of, you could hear this big pause. And it was like, and she said, oh, I think that one will be in the barrel for a long time. And you know what? The Danica barrel, that's our first barrel. She's still in the barrel, but she's delicious right now. So she has been there a long time. But
That's awesome.
it was really just the people that we've met. I think it is really I mean, we've been in the metals business and things, but the support and the friendliness and you know, no matter where you had questions or, you know, you you can't get barrels. And when we were doing it, not only could you not get stills, we finish and all of a sudden we realized that they won't even answer your phone when you want to order barrels. I mean, new distilleries were sticking them in anything they could find. And yet they picked Nancy picked up the phone and called Independence Day for us and pulled some strings. And they said, we'll give you 20, well, we give you, no, they will sell you
Yeah,
20 American oak barrels if you take 20 European oak. Well, that was it. We thought, but European oak are like twice as expensive.
Sure.
And so we said, you know what, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And remember when we talked about fate? Then we did our purple corn and we put it in that European oak, and it was the perfect marriage for our barrels. It's one of our favorite blends and maturation vessels for us. And once again, things just kind of fell into place. So you never know.
You never know. So during our time with Robert, he made it very clear that, mom was in charge at the distillery. How much of your leadership style is executive, and how much of the approach is, just you being their mom?
Most of what it's very, very intertwined, because not only we do that, Jonathan's children are here. Especially like during COVID and things. So we've got everybody here. We pick the kids up from school. So we do have a lot of that. But primarily, Robert does, and his wife, they do the social media. He does all of the TABC, all the taxes and everything. Jonathan focuses primarily on the production side. We all do the blending and tasting because we all sat in all those same classes and we're learning, we learned everything together. And that means that I get to do the daily books. I get to do, of course, there's, being the mom, guess who gets to do more of the cleanup and more of the daily chores? Yeah.
Mom's job never ends.
Forever.
They don't change a bit. So we do that. The logistics are kind of on me, because Robert does the paperwork, but Robert always has the big picture and the broader picture. And I'm like, do you have toilet paper towels for the bathrooms when the guests are coming? Do we have glassware ready? Do we have, we're looking, I spend time looking for the specialty grains and I do that a lot with Jonathan, or we need air compressors, or we need to have the sanitizing, all of those kinds of things, all of those very strategic things that you need on detail, that's on me.
Yeah.
So, I want to go back to something you said a little while ago. You obviously you've been in other business before, and in this industry, we often remark just how helpful everyone is. People truly want to help each other out. I think that this is the one industry where I think everyone realizes that the more we're all successful, it's going to make everyone that much more successful. Have you ever seen any other industry that's just been this, supportive?
No. Not teaching, and I mean, although I had wonderful people that were co-workers, but not overall. And I think that you're exactly right. Especially, we're going to look at Texas, because I can't speak for the other states as much, although I've never run into anybody that wasn't helpful. But when we came here, we're such a young industry. Everybody is just beginning to find out information. And I remember, things, Dan Garrison once talked to the guys when they were talking about expansion and moving into other regions and whatever. And he gave that very strategic, wonderful information. Then we will talk to somebody else and they'll say, you're doing a distillery, don't mess up like we do. Make sure you put in big floor drains, and it was things like that. But we also know that as a Texas industry, we're only 12 years old. And if we do not, we collaborate, we talk, we know almost everybody. Well, we did. There's so many coming in new that we don't know a lot of the new ones. But when we started out, Jared and Zach from Balcones, they would come up and they would just distill on a Friday night just to have fun and do something different. Chip Tate has been up here when early on in Balcones, and then after he left, and he's done a little bit of distillation, and so not only do they just talk and work, but they have fun together, and it's a great industry to be in. It really is.
Yeah. You know, at the end of the day, I mean, you're still mom. You're still, it's a family. You're their mom. You see them every day, and you'd like to think you know them as well, if not better than anybody else in the world. But what's it like working with them every day? I mean, is it something, you know, is that something you would wish for everybody else? Because I don't know if everyone would want to be able to do that.
I think for us, it really has worked out well. I'm not sure with all, you know, everybody has to have a sense of who they are and what they're doing. And you have to have an ability to be an independent person with it. It would not work if I depended on them all the time when we go out to take care of me when I'm out there, or to, so I think you have to have, I think we learned as a team, and we perform, you know, all of the things that need to be done at the distillery kind of as a team, and everybody kind of knows what they're doing. And it's kind of funny right now, their dad has come because he retired and he's here. We call him Intern John. And I think their standing joke is that he's going to be an intern until he has so many days without any mistakes. But they always make sure he makes one.
Yeah,
So,
do you sign up yet? Is there, you know, number of days since his last mistake?
Right.
probably this morning. I mean, but no major ones, just little.
Okay.
And he's our calming
heard.
factor. You know, if personalities are saying, probably I'm a little more like Jonathan, probably a little more type A here, and John and Robert are like easy going. Everybody loves John. So but I don't think it's for everybody. I mean, I think that if you cannot put your you have to have empathy for other people, the person you're working for. And that means that Robert, although he has no young children, has to understand the pressures in the family. There's a lot of, interrelationships that I think just that work out well for him, and Jonathan understands where Robert needs his support in his personal life, and are willing to make those choices. So, I don't know, Rob had some difficult year, especially his fiance was in a serious accident, and was in the hospital for quite a while, and she had a year of rehab and things, and yet then on the other hand, Jonathan's wife was in the hospital before his son was born for quite a while, but of course nothing happens in Denison. It's always they have to go to Dallas, and so I think that you have to respect everybody. You have to realize everybody has something to bring to the table, and then you got to learn give and take.
Yeah.
And then when they don't, I step in. No.
Yeah. Because you will have to separate them if you have to separate them. Right?
Yeah,
I think that goes without saying.
Oh.
Well, still, at the end of the day, no matter what happens, you're still family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It is.
Yep.
So you talked a little bit, at the beginning, you kind of get thrown this at you at Christmas dinner, and, your supportive mom, you said, go forward with it, but you had your own stress about it. So you're talking little panic attacks and those type of things. But at this point, you've embraced it. Not only are you working with your boys every day, I understand that when you go to local events, whether it's a tasting or that type of thing, you really have the mothership role with kind of all the distilleries and all the events that you guys do. And Robert was kind of joking that, you're kind of known as Bourbon's mom around these things. And tell us a little bit about embracing that part of being what you're doing.
I think it first started, we were down at Mike that owned Reserve 101. We were sitting at a table one day, and we had been doing I think we were doing a blending with another distillery, and he was kind of part of it, and he was teasing me, and he was calling me, he says, "You're the mother of Texas whiskey." Well, this kind of happened to catch on, because of course we would go out with all these distillers, and I'm really, as old as their mothers, or probably older than some of their mothers. And they always, I don't know whether it was easier because they couldn't remember my name to call me mom, or how it went on. And then Daniel down at Crowded Barrel, from the tribe. One day in the mail arrives a temporary tattoo, a stack of them with my face on it and the mother of Texas whiskey.
I love that.
And so now I mean, how many people have their own
You have a title even. Yeah.
yes. So then it's kind of just stuck with me. And but when we go out, it's we have our own personas. Robert and I go out more than Jonathan does into the public as far as working with people. I've really enjoyed lately working with the Bourbon Women's in Texas, and also just some of our whiskey groups. I remember when we first started, and that was about 7-8 years ago, Rob would take me with him, but it was kind of like, and you're going to understand what I'm saying, some whiskey groups tended to be very closed and very much a men's group.
Yeah.
And they would have their wonderful whiskeys, and then we would be invited. And I remember the first time I went to one, and we sat there and we're talking, and they of course assumed that I know nothing about whiskey, because that would be probably more true than I would have liked to think. But I remember them starting out, and we were talking about something, and one of the guys, he put his hand on my shoulder. He says, "But Marcia, you just don't know what we drink." And
you showed him your tattoo.
But later, now we work with the same whiskey groups, and they're coming in and they're sharing, and it has evolved totally. But I think the whole industry, it's amazing how it has changed in the last, let's say, 5 or 6 years. It's becoming so much more open, and so many more women are into it, or are into whiskeys. And maybe a lot of women liked whiskey before, but they weren't as open about it. And I think that there's a lot of the groups that are embracing both the women and the men in the groups. But it's funny, the women also, they want to, all of a sudden they want to do the same thing the guys are doing. So I see them having bottle shares and things, and I just see it growing. But this I don't think was happening, not in Texas. I don't think it was probably happening that much in Kentucky or other places. I think the whole industry, especially what you're doing, I think that the YouTube and the all of the social media groups have really brought so much to so many people that everybody feels that they have a place in it. It's not just for the special group, small groups. I called them the stodgy old men's club, because have you been to the St. Louis Athletic Club? I've been there. I've been not to the second floor swimming pool. I know that.
No, don't go there. No, I don't want to go there. No.
No. So,
this is true, but
I think it's changed.
It is. It's becoming a more inclusive group, and that's just all across the board. But you're instrumental in that as well, being a woman in the industry, because you are a woman in the industry. So, and you're getting out there and you're making it known that women know more than just how to sip on whiskey. You can actually have a conversation revolving around whiskey. So, good for you.
I think we do tastings and Total Wines, and all of a sudden you have all these people standing around listening to you. And I think, they were looking like, wow, people want education, even doing tastings on Friday nights out in liquor stores. And some of those are the funniest experiences. I mean, we were doing it, and you go to the same places, and pretty soon you're saying, it's Friday night. Oh, we know who's coming, because you'd have the same groups that would hit every single table, and then they would leave because that was their social tasting event for the week. They didn't have to go anyplace else. They could go to their local liquor store for tastings. Or you come in and you have some people want to, they're so opinionated on what they're doing. And it's hard to sometimes. I remember the funniest guy, and he was from Kentucky, and you're coming to Texas, and Texas has to, we had and this was about 4 years ago, so we were relatively new into the industry. And this guy came in, and he must have been as old as me, okay? And he looked at me and he said, "I'm not tasting that." And I'm thinking, then why are you standing in this group of people if you don't want to taste it? And he said, and everybody's looking at me and looking at him, and he says, my grandpa drank Jim Beam, my dad drank Jim Beam, and I'm only drinking Jim Beam. And you look at him and you're thinking, and so why are you standing in line at this tasting? And everybody's kind of looking at me like, how are you going to respond to him? So I looked at him and I said, if you eat chicken every night, I'm not sure you'll know how good steak could be. And
Yep.
I love it.
And he looked at me and he says, I might taste some of that. And I think he even took a bottle home. And so it's,
that's great.
You have fun stories, and winning people over to Texas whiskey has been, an experience. And I mean, even if you're in the St. Louis area or just outside of the Kentucky, Tennessee area, it's been just the last few years that people are willing to expand their palates to a wider profile of what the bourbons can be.
Yep. True.
Definitely.
So Ironroot Bourbon wins Best Bourbon in the World. Is this a proud Ironroot Republic moment for you, or is this a proud mom moment?
Oh, this is a proud mom moment.
Yeah.
It is,
so
because I really think that the talent and the skills are my sons. I'm very supportive with it. I work with them, but they are the driving force of the Ironroot, and they are the creative force of Ironroot. And it was one of those people say, I'm just still speechless when I even think about it. It was extremely humbling. It was something that you don't ever conceive that could probably happen, let alone a whiskey that we took off the shelf and stuck it in the box and sent it on. And when it won, it had already been on every Total Wine, every liquor store in Texas, and it was probably still sitting there, right? At least for a few minutes. And
it disappeared.
It disappeared pretty fast.
It did.
But it was, we understand competitions. We understand that it is a subjective. We understand that it's like baseball or any other sport, that that it's only a moment in time that you have that. And for us to have gotten that moment, it is just I just don't even have the words, because
but sometimes you need those little moments for people to kind of create some buzz around something, for the masses to be able to go out and for it to be on their radar, and then they get to try it themselves and then fall in love with it. So they are small moments in time, but I think what happens is it leads to more reach and far greater things.
Oh, you are exactly right. Jonathan describes right now when he makes whiskey, he said, every time I do this, he says, I feel like I'm pouring my whiskey in a black hole.
Yeah.
Because right now we just can't keep up. And people say, why don't you have more? And I said, okay, let's look at our big picture. The whiskey was a little over 3 years old. That means that we were 3.5 years old when we made that whiskey. And we hardly even know what it's going to taste like. We were just beginning to find out what whiskeys are, and we're a small family. We're not corporate. So when you make whiskey, you bring in the grain, you mash, ferment, distill, and put it in a barrel. And there it sits. And there's no dollars coming back on it, except the dollars going out. Even the tax people are getting money at that point, right? Yeah. And so you have to balance about, finances are all about that balance. And so you make as much as you're comfortable making. And then, of course, you're tweaking and looking at things that how can we make it better still? Of course, we should be doing that. And we are trying to do that every day. But there's a balancing act when you're small. And there's a difference in distilleries because we had to find distribution. We're in a small town in north of Dallas, and we're not like if you want to come here, you really have to want to come here. You're either on your way to the casinos in Oklahoma, or you're trying to get to Dallas. So we're not like the weekend stop. So there were challenges and things as you begin, but it makes you make choices. And I think that I tell my sons every day, you do not have a check on reality. As you say, you get those wins. We've had wonderful response to our whiskeys. I said, your dad worked for 50 years in the metals industry, and I don't think that he gets as much positive reinforcement in his entire career as you all are getting in a week. So you don't have it. So that's a mother. I have to bring them down to earth.
You have to mom moment them sometimes.
Right. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
The reality, you guys are blessed.
Exactly.
See, it's funny you say that. So, recently I had this very humbling situation because I've got an almost 20-year-old son, and my father is in his mid 70s. And I found my son did something really, really stupid the other day. And I just was watching and was shaking my head like, oh, you're a dumbass. And then I did something. I saw my father doing the same look at me. And I thought, oh, no, I know where I get it from. As a parent, you're working with your entire family. You're working with your husband, who's obviously interning there now.
The intern. Yeah, he's in. He
intern.
may or may not make it. He may or may not make the cut.
You find yourself, obviously you're going to put them in place when they have to, but what happens when they get in trouble with you at work? I mean, what does that look like? Do you just shake your head, or you just sort of, or you have a real mom moment?
Sometimes, sometimes I say, I think I need to go to Walmart and get this. Sometimes I just try to step back.
Yeah.
And because the hours are long. I mean, people, when you're running a distillery, much of the time there's only 3 of us here. That means that nobody can work alone. So on Tuesdays, Robert, we start in here at 4 a.m. in the morning. And then Jonathan doesn't come in until 7:30 or about the time he gets the kids into school. And then he stays at night because these stills will run 18 hours. And so we're running those kind of days. And the next morning, Rob will be here at, to mash by 6 a.m. And then Jonathan will finish him up at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night. So the hours are long, and you spend a lot. You spend time with one-on-one a lot of the time. And it's a good thing that, Rob has his office, he goes and does his thing. And, you get tired, you get tired. And on the weekends, Rob, he'll be out and we'll be out doing tastings and things. And you have to have a lot of commitment. It is not an easy, and it is as much as rewards and how fun it is. And we would not stop it for a minute. You really have to understand that, it takes a lot to create the wonderful products that everybody enjoys. And it doesn't matter if you're a huge distillery or a small distillery, there's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah.
It's hard work.
Are you the kind of, if you use their middle name, as far as calling them out, is like, Robert and his middle name, he knows he's in trouble at that point?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. she might just pull that out today just to keep everyone on their toes.
That's right.
Yeah.
So this is a question I get to ask every guest, and I never thought that I would, be asking one of our moms this question, but do you have any scoop for us? Because you actually work at the distillery. Do you have anything coming up at Ironroot that our listeners might be interested in?
Had so much going on lately. We're getting a new bottling line, and therefore we've made some, the
infrastructure investment.
Yeah. Well, the bottling line was ordered a year ago.
Wow.
And it was supposed to be here in September. It arrived into the U.S. ports in January. Took 3 months to get from California to Texas. And of course, the motor doesn't work on it, right? But so we have all, so mechanical challenges, I think, have been one of our biggest things.
Yeah.
But because we were able to do this, we decided to start, not only we have Ironroot, which is always grain to glass, and it will always be grain to glass,
Yep.
and will always be locally sourced. We decided to work with another good friend of ours and create a second brand that is going to be, it's an MGP, but it's Ironroot. We're not going to do, it's going to be MGP, but we'll put Ironroot in it.
Yep.
But because we always, we stick very much, you've talked to Rob about our connection with France and everything we do. It's going to be then finished in port and cognac barrels, a second one in Armagnac barrels, and then a third one in a French rum cask.
Wow.
And so those will be new, and those will, if the bottling line gets going, will be out within probably the next 6 weeks.
Wow.
So that's kind of, it's going to be called Saints Alley, because downtown we have a second building, and its alley is called Saints Alley because all the churches kind of downtown, a lot of them back up, so they
Saints
call
Alley.
it Saints Alley.
Oh,
That's
that's
cool.
so cool.
Yeah.
You're literally the mother of all scoop.
That's the best scoop you ever got. And it came from our mom and me,
Honestly,
Renee.
yeah.
That's the best one.
Like mother of bourbon and mother of scoop.
Right.
To be honest, no one's ever given Renee any scoop before at all.
No,
She asks it every time.
my
I
gosh.
have a very poor track record. I had, and I bring this up all the time. I had Pamela Heilman from Michter's on here. Michter's does a toasted barrel bourbon, which I absolutely love. And we had her on, and I asked her straight to her face if there was any more toasted barrel bourbon. And she said no. And a week later it came out.
Oh,
So I
gosh.
don't think that at Michter's that would just happen in a week. So
Right.
I am truly appreciative of your scoop today.
I think that, yeah, it's going to be a real fun project for us.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we enjoy is the blending aspect of the
Yeah.
whiskeys.
Oh, yeah.
And because we're a small distillery, if we had the big distilleries and you're dumping 500 barrels, you have a much better chance of hitting a consistency if you're using the same mash bill. We push ours to the limit. We're going to do, when we do our mash bills, we do it so that one is going to be Bloody Butcher corn, and one's going to be purple corn. One's going to have more of the rye. Then we're going to have one that has our flint corn that we use in our Promethean. And then when we have those all sitting out there, you have to blend them. So when you start, when you start in your small distillery, you're only blending 5. Now we do, of course, larger, but we blend to, to certain profiles. And then my sons, I think one of the most fun things about them is that I think they're ADD, they are. And so we have all these projects. So we have done we've done a atomic orange corn, of which I grew the samples of. We've done a magic manna corn. It's fabulous. It smells like sugar cookies coming off the still. We've done, of course, the green Oaxacan corn. It was so good we did it a second time. So those become things that can be single barrels, or we're using blending tools. And so Jonathan likes to explain that when we do that, when we're making our whiskeys, of course, our yellow dent corn is the base, but we're going to add our 5% of our heirloom corns to it. So the yellow corn is like if you had steak. He's the steak cooker, right? And then, traditionally you're going to add the flavoring is going to be the rye or the wheat. And of course your yeast, but we won't go into that part. But now we can add more salt and pepper and barbecue seasoning, because we're adding, all these different flavors. And so those allow us to then use blending techniques in order to create different spirits. So,
very cool.
And we had a fun project and it continues. It's called Grayson. You probably haven't heard about that out there. It was for Vernon Wells, the baseball player. It's his brand. And they wanted us to create the project. And Jonathan says, I don't have enough juice to do a project that large. How about if we do a blended bourbon from Texas? And so we call up our friends, Balcones, and our friends over at Lone Elm, and Jonathan uses the blending to create Grayson. And that came out, the first one about 2 months ago. And it'll come out again, and we're going to add some additional Texas whiskeys to it as we go. So by doing all of this, this allows us to not only just have our core brands, but to have fun. And I think that's what makes the difference, is that every day can be fun. You can create, or you have new ideas, and it's we always say that on this point, Jonathan has the gas pedal, and Rob's putting on the brakes. He said, wait a minute, got to have enough of our core product. Get back there doing purple bunny butcher and rye. And then Jonathan, and he says, so Rob comes up with the rules. I love the rules. You don't know where he gets these rules. Rob makes up rules. And he's
right on the spot.
And he'll say, you can only do 6 experiments a year. And so the first quarter, Jonathan's probably got 4 or 5 of them already in the mix. And then, so Rob gets him at the end. He says, Jonathan, let's do rye. And we used to shut down in the summer because of the heat.
Yeah.
But we have a new chiller. We don't have to.
Yeah.
So the last distillation of the year, Rob would talk him into doing rye. And God bless people who do rye, because every time we do rye, Jonathan says, don't ever ask me to do this again. I hate rye balls. And it's like childbirth. The next year, Robert gets him again.
You always forget.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Marcia, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate this. Was fun. This is exactly
really
everything we could have imagined and more.
Thank you. I had a great time.
Do you want to share anything in terms of social media for the company or yourself or websites? Anything like that is fine.
Oh, gosh. You know what? We have ironrootrepublic.com, and you can sign up for newsletters on it. And we're on Facebook. And Robert won't let me do any of the other ones because he's afraid of what I'm going to say.
Another rule. That's a rule.
Another rule. I told you he has rules.
He made right up.
Yeah, remind him of your mom, and you'll do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I like Kylie. She's got the wonderful personality. She's the one that is our gem on some of those too. So
Yeah.
that'd be Robert's wife.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Marcia. We really appreciate it.
But thank you so much, and good luck with your channel. And I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was great.